I remember, aged about 13, my dad was at the hospital, I was at home with the other kids, and he phoned me to say, your mum's not going to make it. And, and then he said, can you tell the others? And that was pretty tough for a 13-year-old to try to contemplate. Well, I grew up in a little place called Oxted in Surrey. My dad was a tool maker, so he worked on the factory floor all of his life. And I remember distinctly that he would go to work 8 o'clock in the morning, come back at 5 o'clock, have his tea, and then go back to work 6 o'clock till 10 o'clock in the evening, 5 days a week. So that was pretty tough on him. My mum was a nurse before she had children, and then she had a disease that she got when she was 11, Still's disease, which is where your immune system turns in on itself. She was given steroids, which were new at the time. Nobody knew much about steroids. And whereas she'd been told by the time she was 20 she wouldn't have children, she wouldn't be able to walk, the steroids meant that she had 4 children and she could walk in her 20s, but the steroids and the Still's disease over the years took a terrible toll on her. I remember, aged about 13, my dad was at the hospital, I was at home with the other kids, and he phoned me to say, your mum's not going to make it. And then he said, can you tell the others? And that was pretty tough for a 13-year-old to try to contemplate. As it happens, mum did make it, and she lived with the illness for a long time, but eventually it meant that she was unable to walk, unable really to talk. She had her leg amputated and she couldn't do anything unassisted. And that was really tough. I think those two things, the sort of factory floor worker that my dad was, and his strong Labour views, and my mum's absolute devotion to the NHS, impacted on me and certainly shaped my politics as a young person. And I joined the Labour Party just as soon as I could, age 16. Originally, I was so into politics that I thought I wanted to go into politics. I think my dad and others thought that law was going to be a much better profession to go into. So I went off to Leeds University. It was an exciting place to be. We were out and about the whole time. I studied law. We sort of worked hard and played hard. And it was whilst I was at Leeds that I started to study and to understand international human rights law, which in the end guided me into my career.
You eventually became the director of public prosecutions. Is there any work from that time that you're particularly proud of now?
The Stephen Lawrence case. Stephen, as everybody knows, was murdered in racially charged circumstances. And for many years, Doreen Lawrence, who I worked with at the time, now a friend and in fact an advisor to me as leader of the Labour Party, Doreen never gave up on justice for Stephen. And eventually, when I was Director of Public Prosecutions, there was a breakthrough with new evidence, new techniques in DNA, new evidence about fibres that clothes leave on the scene of the crime. And we were able to prosecute 2 of those responsible for Stephen's murder, and they're now in prison. And to see the degree of justice for Doreen and the family was very, very impactful on me. The other case that I remember profoundly was cases involving violence against women and girls. I was struck by just how prevalent violence against women and girls was, domestic violence, domestic abuse, sexual violence. And also, the more time I spent as the Director of Public Prosecutions, the more I came to think that the criminal justice system was not set up to deal with violence against women and girls at all well. And some of the stuff we looked at was obvious. 9 out of 10 women and girls who experience abuse or violence, whether it's at home or in the street, in public, don't come forward to report it to the police. 9 out of 10. And the more we chipped away at this, the more obvious it became that there were some real stumbling blocks along the way. It's pretty unusual for someone who's been through an experience like that to want to walk into a police station. And therefore, we worked with others in the field on sexual assault referral clinics, where women and girls could go to a hospital setting, for example, to report what had happened to them. In the 5 years that I was there, we set about those changes. I became convinced that the criminal justice system needed pretty radical change and needed to be much more focused on victims. Some of these issues have been there for a very, very long time, and some of the provisions I thought ought to be in the law when I was Director of Public Prosecution, so that's 2008 through to 2013, have still not been done, and that's a huge, huge frustration.
You actually became leader in lockdown. That must have been an incredibly strange time for you personally.
It was very odd to become leader of the Labour Party during lockdown, nearly 12 months into me being leader of the Labour Party. And I still haven't done a speech to a live audience. Every speech I've done has been down the barrel of a camera, and that is deeply, deeply frustrating. I think it has made the job harder because without being out and about in town centres, in communities, in businesses where you can talk to people close up, have the sort of conversations that you would normally have without the restrictions, it is much, much harder. I feel very much like I want to sort of take the mask off and open the throttle, and I haven't been able to for the 12 months or so I've been leader. Obviously, we've got to live with restrictions for a bit longer, but the sooner I can get out there to live audiences, to seeing people in their communities in the ordinary way, the better it will be from my point of view.
At times, some people on the left of your party have accused you of not criticising the government enough during this pandemic. Do you think that's fair?
I said when I took over as Labour leader that I would offer a constructive opposition. And I did that because my strong view then, and it's my view now, is that in a pandemic, when a virus like this comes along, which has now taken, 126,000 deaths, most people think first and foremost about their family, and they worry about the health of their family and their friends. And in those circumstances, most people want the government to get it right. I think it's right to support the government where they get it right to criticise where they get it wrong. And half of the people have criticised me for supporting the government at all. Half of people have criticised me for criticising the government. So something tells me that we probably just about got the balance about right.
What do you do for fun? Well, we know Boris likes to build model buses. What do you do?
No model buses for me. I've got, I think, two major outlets and things that happen at home for me. The first is our kids. We've got a 10-year-old girl and a 12-year-old boy. They are fantastic. They're my lifeline. The other thing is I love football. And I play football at least once a week, twice if I can, not during the pandemic, of course. I watch football whenever I can, and I'm a season ticket holder at Arsenal. And so on match day, when I can go and meet our friends in the pub for a pint and a pizza and go to the game. And so my children and football are my fantastic release from my job.
What are we feeling about Mikel Arteta's team this season?
Despite the results, because we're fighting to get into the top half of the table just at the moment, despite the results, I'm optimistic, and I'm particularly optimistic about the really new young players that are coming through. We've got Saka, Smith Rowe, Martinelli, fantastic new players breaking through, young players breaking through.
And then famously we've seen that picture of Matt Hancock playing football. Are you a better player than Matt Hancock?
I've never played against Matt, so I'll leave that for others to judge. In my head, I'm still a box-to-box midfield player. All the guys I play with would laugh at that now and text me and say, yeah, Keir, in your head.
Well, on football, are you pro VAR or anti-VAR?
Oh, I quite like VAR. This is the lawyer of me. I quite like the right decision. Although, as ever, it depends who's playing.
I don't know if you've seen, you've kind of become a meme online as well. Have you seen this image here?
I have, yeah.
They are looking rather disappointed.
I think that was one answer that Boris Johnson was giving me, and I was thinking, oh no. the Prime Minister goes this way, he goes that way, he doesn't answer the question, and that ends up with reactions from me on my face thinking, for heaven's sake, answer the question.
Why should the young people who are watching this video right now decide that they want Keir Starmer as their next Prime Minister?
Because I want things to change. I think we need to change for the better. And coming out of this pandemic, we've got the choice. Go back to what we had before, which I think was broken, or go forward to something better. And for young people, this is hugely important because the last 10 years have been a real struggle. So firstly, because I want to change things for the better. Second thing, I want to empower young people. I don't want to be the spokesperson for young people. That's completely wrong. I want young people to be able to speak for themselves and to be empowered to do so. So young people for change, but young people to speak for themselves and to be empowered. I think that is far more important. And what I look forward to is the day when young people watching this are in the position to take the decisions I take, that other people take, and the sooner the better.
I got this job and I had to put a budget together in, I think it was about 3 weeks. And at that moment, I remember those 3 weeks were obviously really busy. And I thought that would be the hardest thing that I'd ever have to do in my professional life. And it turned out that that's probably the easiest thing I've had to do in the 6 months or so that I've had the job.